Hello, hello. Looks like we are live. Let me just check a few things. Let me see, checking my levels. Should be able to hear the guitar. Should be able to hear my voice. If I am muted for any reason, please let me know in chat. I had to reconfigure some audio settings in OBS, so I'm just making sure everything's working good. Okay, that looks good to me. Excuse me. How's everybody doing today? It is good to be back. As you can see from the title of today's lesson, we're going to be talking all about music terms. So let me just give you a glimpse into what I was thinking when I was putting this all together. The main thing is when I was probably nine or 10 years into playing guitar, into my guitar musical journey, I realized that I had kind of hit a wall. There were things that I knew how to do just from like practicing and trying to emulate my favorite players, but as far as my understanding of how music worked and how to put things together and how to be creative in making my own music, I really didn't have any ability with that. So it was all just kind of copying what I saw. So my idea was, okay, when I hit that wall, what I decided to do was I decided to take more seriously the learning of music theory, how to compose music, all the different elements that make up good musical composition, right? Because we don't just want to make noise, we want to make really compelling melodies and songs. And so I spent the better part of maybe 3 or 4 years learning everything I could about music theory. And so what I wanted to do today is kind of distill all that learning into something that's quick to digest, but also for you to use as a starting point. All right, so hear me out. I want you to use everything that I'm going to be going over in today's stream as a starting point. Time will not permit me to explain all of these terms in detail to the point where everything just kind of sinks in. But at least after watching today's stream, you will know of these terms. And then what I would highly encourage you to do is just take this list and go and research each item on your own and really internalize it. Like I said, I spent the better part of 4 years learning this stuff. And when I say learning, I mean learning and relearning. Okay, so it was a lot of listening to the same type of explanations from all different kinds of teachers, YouTube videos, online guitar schools, that kind of stuff, and just kind of seeing what was I hearing over and over until the point where it finally stuck and I really could grasp these terms in depth. All right, so it is my hope for you that this can be a great starting point for you, and especially for those of us who hope to either make a career out of music or just make better music in general. It can only help you to have a better and more, more complete understanding of music and how it's put together and what kind of lingo is going to be used on stage, in the industry, that type of deal. So, without any further ado, why don't we get into it? I'm going to pull up my notes so I don't lose track of where I'm at. Go ahead and let me know in the chat where you're watching from if you would like. It's always good to see where my viewers are coming from. All right, so we're going to start from the very basics. All right, so bear with me. It's going to get into more complicated stuff later on, but start with just the basics so that nobody gets left behind. So the first term number 1, is note. All right, and you might be thinking, Tizo, that's too basic. Everybody knows what a note is. Not everybody, okay? And so the definition of note that I've come up with and found is it's a representation of a musical sound. Every note has a unique frequency, and it can be represented by combinations of letters, numbers, and symbols. All right, so it's just a musical sound, okay? A unique musical sound. The second term is going to be the musical alphabet. So just like we said before, notes are represented by letters, symbols, and numbers. So the letters that we end up using in the musical alphabet are the first 7 letters of the English alphabet. So A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So the only 7 letters you need to know to be able to work with the musical alphabet, okay? And they are used to represent groups of notes, okay, not just single notes, and I'll explain more about that later. So the third term is interval, okay? So what an interval is, it's the difference in pitch between 2 notes. All right, so let me let me show you some common intervals that you may or may not have already heard of. Okay, so on guitar, the first kinds of intervals that I usually teach with my private lesson students are what are called whole steps and half steps. Let's start with half steps first. So on guitar, a half step is just the distance from one fret to the next. So from fret 3 to fret 4. That is a half step. You've traveled a half step when you move that distance. And it works backwards too. So from fret 3 to fret 2, that is a half step, right? So that's the smallest interval that we're really going to be dealing with on guitar. Okay, so if a half step is only one space, then it would follow that a whole step is 2 spaces. So from 3 to 5, that's a whole step. And from 3 back to 1 would be a whole step as well. All right, so those are your 2 very common intervals that you would really want to know, especially if you're playing guitar. Half step, whole step, okay? And we typically measure these intervals in semitones, okay? So you might have heard that term before, or maybe not. Semitone is the same thing as a half step, okay? Just to keep it simple. So one semitone is from one fret to the next, and as you increase in semitones, you get farther away from your starting note. So from 3, 1 semitone brings you to 4, 2 semitones is to 5. It's very simple. 3 semitones is to 6, 4 semitones is to 7, and it just keeps going and going. All right. The most that you'll have is 12 semitones between 2 notes that are the same. So a little bit earlier, I said that these musical alphabet letters represent groups of notes, not just a single note, especially if it's just the letter, right? So what you'll find on most instruments is they actually have a few different kinds of notes that go by the same letter name, but they don't sound the same exactly. So here's what I mean. The 3rd fret of this low E string, thickest string, right, is the note G when you're in standard tuning. That's a G, all right? And if you go up 12 frets to fret 15, that is also a G. So you can kind of hear that they have something in common, right? The actual sound of the note is similar, but the pitch, how low or how high sounding it is different depending on different spots or where you are on the neck of the guitar. That's a lower pitched G note, and this is a higher pitched G note, but both are represented by the letter G. Now, the way that you would distinguish between this G and this G is you would add numbers. So typically, this is a little bit easier to conceptualize on a piano. That's where I first learned of this. But the lower notes, basically the lowest notes, start with the number 0 attached to them. So you'll have like A0, B0, C0, so on and so forth, right? All the way up to 8, I believe. So A8, B8, C8. The higher the number, the higher pitched the note will sound, okay? So while the letter can represent multiple notes or a group of notes, once you put that number next to it, you know exactly which specific note you're talking about, which unique note, okay? All right, so that is 3 so far. If you have any questions about what I've gone over so far, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Don't be shy, and we're gonna keep moving along. So we've done 3 so far. All right, so now we know what notes are, right? Notes are a representation of a musical sound, okay? Now you wanna know this concept called the root note. So root notes are very, very important, okay? Root notes, you can think of those as your starting point or your focal point for whatever musical structure you're going by. So a root note can be the focus of a chord. It can be the focus of a whole piece of music. It can be like the key of the song, right? You might have heard like the key of C or the key of A, whatever it is. That C note or that A note becomes the focal point or the starting point upon which you build the rest of whatever you're doing for your song or for your piece of music. So I'll get into a little bit more detail about what those structures that rely on the root note are a little bit later. All right, so just think, when you think root note, think primary note, starting note, focal point. The 5th term that you want to know is melody. Okay, So when you have your notes, right, in order to make music, you need to be able to arrange these notes in time. When you play one note after the other, that is called a melody. Whenever you put together any kind of phrase or line where it's single notes played one at a time in succession, that's a melody. So you may or may not know this one. All right, ring any bells? All right, so that is a melody, what you're hearing there. That's that very common song that we all know, that we hear once a year, hopefully, is a melody, okay? So melodies are very important, right? Because you can kind of attach the identity, or like when you hear a melody that you know very well, the entire song and maybe like the emotions behind it come right back to your head, okay? So melody is super important. But all it is it's a sequence of notes played one after another, okay? Now the counterpart to melody is something called harmony, okay? And just like melody is notes played one after each other, the only difference with harmony, it's notes played at the same time, okay? So where you would recognize this, recognize that melody, the harmony that would go underneath that would be da 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 da. Oh, wrong chord. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Okay, so you got these groups of notes being played simultaneously that make up that backbone, that harmony backbone of the song. Okay, so once again, melody is one note after another, played in sequence, and harmony is notes ringing out together. It's that effect that's created when you have multiple notes that sound good together, playing out at the same time. Okay? So we are up to number 7. How are we doing out there? Let me check chat one time just to see. All right, let's go. Let's keep it going. If you have any questions, you can always drop it in the chat for me. And you know, even if it's something that we covered a little bit earlier, if you wanted to like say, hey, can you go back and talk about this one term from way back when, I will be happy to review it for you. Okay? I want to make sure that you guys leave here with some good information. So harmony. Okay. So harmony is that effect when you have multiple notes ringing out together. They sound good, ringing out at the same time. Now a chord, which is our term number 7, a chord is basically an example of harmony, right? I just played 2 chords after that melody to Happy Birthday. So da 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 da. Okay, so those chords are the harmonic backbone of the song, and they go together with the melody, right? Now, what is an actual chord? If you wanted to break it down to a definition, at its simplest, a chord is a group of at least 3, sometimes more, notes that are being played at the same time to form like a unique or a specific sound, okay? So we say 3 or more, okay? 3 or more notes played together. Now, if you were to use just 3 notes, you would make something that refers to our next term, which is term number 8, and that would be a triad. So a group of 3 notes, which is the simplest form of a chord, is called a triad. There are all kinds of triads. So if I play a C major triad for you, it would be this one here. Okay. Another one you could play here. Right, similar notes, but sounds a little bit different, a little bit bassier. You could do here. You could do here. So there's a bunch of different triad locations all over the fretboard, and I definitely encourage you to study that in depth in particular, especially if you're playing in a band context. Because if you have someone like a bassist or even someone on keys taking care of the low end portion of a song, then you're really going to be staying away from your low E and your A string and mostly playing triads if you're playing chords, you know, if you're doing the rhythm guitar part for that. So triads, group of 3 notes, simplest kind of chord you can form, okay? And now when you go about the process of learning triads, you're going to come across our next term, which is called an inversion. So here is an example of a C major triad. It's made up of the notes C, E, and G. All right. And so C, E, and G is what we call the root position triad, which just means that the root note, which is the note C, right? We're playing a C major chord, so our focal note is C. That C is the lowest pitched note in the triad, right? The notes E and G are a little bit higher pitched sounding. That's our C, that's our E, that's our G. Okay, so when we have our root note as the lowest pitched note in the triad, that's called root position. And now an inversion is simply when you rearrange the order of those notes. So if you were to put it so that the G chord, or the G note, was the lowest note in the triad, it's still a C major triad, but it's an inversion. We call that one second inversion. All right, and that's when the G out of C, E, and G is the lowest note, lowest pitch note, okay? And then if you go up to here, now I have the E as the lowest note. E, G, C. Because that E note is our lowest note, that means that we are in what's called first inversion. So you basically just shift the order. We started off with C, E, G, that's root position. Then we move to E, G, C, which would be first inversion. And then G, C, E would be second inversion. Now, when you have chords that have, let's change back just quick. When you have chords that have more than 3 notes in them, they might have 4, or specifically 4 is the most common, but maybe 5, whatever it is. You have more steps to kind of shift each note down to the lowest note, right? So chords that have 4 notes can make root position, first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion, because you have that 4th note to shift down to the lowest. All right. So just keep that in mind. So an inversion is just a rearranging of the same notes. It's still a C major chord, even though it sounds a little bit different. That's still a C major. That's a C major. That's a C major. That one, all C major, but we're just playing different inversions, rearranging those notes around to get a slightly different sound out of it. All right. So let me just check chat real quick. Hey bro, how you doing? Doing pretty good. I'm glad that you're able to make it. Let's see. Labmore says, let me try to stay in range of the microphone. Labmore says, can you please explain chord hammer-on-offs, hammer-ons and hammer-offs? Chord hammer-ons? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. Do you mean like starting with one chord and then hammering onto a different chord? Like you're playing, let's say I'm playing that D major triad, and now I'm hammering on into that G major triad. That kind of thing? Let me know in chat if that's what you're talking about, and I'll come back to it after we get through all these terms. All right, but thank you for the question. And if I can be more specific, I'll help out a little bit later. Okay, so we did triads, we did inversions. We're going strong. Hopefully everybody's following along and feeling good. We are almost halfway through. Number 10 would be chord quality. All right, so the chord quality. What is a chord quality? You probably have already heard of them. What a chord quality is, it refers to the type of chord created by the combination of 3 or more notes. So it's what kind of chord are you playing when you play those 3 notes together. That's your chord quality. The fundamental chord qualities that you want to know are major, minor, and diminished, okay? There are more than just those 3. There are plenty more chord qualities. But those are the first 3 that you really want to lock in with and know how to make them, because that's the fundamental, Those are the fundamental qualities to build upon. From major chords, you can get major 7s, major 9s, major 11s. Same with minor chords, minor 7, minor 11. And then diminished, you can do diminished 7, you can do minor 7 flat 5. It all branches out, but you want to start with just those 3, okay? Major, minor, diminished. Get started with just those, okay? So those are your chord qualities. Remember that term. Term number 11 is chord progression, okay? So I'm sure if you've been watching my videos for any number of, any significant amount of time, you've heard the term chord progression over and over. You probably understand what it is, but just for those who may not know, whenever you have a piece of music and you have the notes that you're supposed to play laid out, The chord progression shows you the sequence of chords to play throughout the song. So a chord progression example could be G major, C major, D major. Okay, and that sounds like this. Okay. And it can just repeat on and on just like that, all right? But that's the sequence. So whenever you hear the term chord progression, it's basically telling you the order of the chords, which chords to play, and in what order. And oftentimes, if it's actually written out sheet music, it'll tell you how many times to play it, when to shift to a different progression, that kind of thing. But it's simply just a sequence of chords in a piece of music, all right? The number 12 term is scale. Okay, so let's take a step back to notes. All right, we talked about notes, musical sounds. When you start grouping these notes together, you can form what are called scales. So what a scale is it's a set of notes, typically seven, but sometimes 5 notes. The pentatonic scale has 5 notes. Most other scales have 7. But you put it together by following a specific pattern of intervals, okay? So we're hitting back at terms we just went over. Specific pattern of intervals will make this specific scale, and it's typically 7 notes, all right? And another characteristic of scales is that they're typically ordered from lowest pitch note to highest pitched. So if I were to play an example, let me make sure this camera 2 is awake. If I want to play an example, I'm going to play the C major scale for you, all right? And you can hear that as I go up the scale, or as I ascend the scale, then the notes become higher pitched. So. All right, so we started here on that C note, and then on that higher pitched C note. And that's our scale. So it's just a set of 7 notes. Sometimes it's 5 notes, but most often it's 7. They're put together by following a certain pattern. So the major scale has a specific pattern that you have to apply to get those notes to sound like that. But you group them together, and then you usually put them in order of pitch, ascending if you're going to ascend the scale. All right. So number 13. We're just moving along now. Number 13 is key. Okay, so once you have a scale, once you know you have these 7 notes that you want to choose to be the notes you use for your song, then you have the key of your song. So what the key is it's the scale, or it indicates the scale that's going to be what you build your music around, okay? So if we were going to build our song that we're making from scratch around the key of C, what that means is the C major scale that I just played for you is going to be what we build with. So we're only going to basically use, or typically, we're going to use those 7 notes from the C major scale to build our chords, to build our melody, all that, okay? So that's what the key is. It just says, use this scale to play this piece of music. And now, of course, the more you spend time kind of learning different songs, you'll see that sometimes there's things that break that rule, where you'll end up using notes and chords that are outside of the key that you're in. But typically, what the majority of the music follows, right? What the pattern of notes that the majority of the music follows will be what the key is. So even if you shift to a different key or borrow a chord from a different key for a few measures or whatever it is, it's what most of the song is in that will determine what that key is. All right, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. With key, just remember, this is the scale that we're using. The key tells you what scale will dictate how the music is built. Number 14 is key signature. So let me pull up an example of that. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions. All right. Yes, but please. Okay, so I'm just checking chat. Labmore says yes, please, but to add sauce to chord progressions. Typically it's using R&B or neo soul. Oh, okay, so I guess what you're asking is like how you add different hammer-ons and pull-off like embellishments to your chords, like going in between different chords. Is that what it is? And then yes, I am always not always. I try to do live lessons once a week. It's been a little bit hectic around here, so I'm trying to get back to my usual. But typically, I would be on giving live lessons on Saturdays. and then maybe do a shorter lesson where I teach just like how to play a song sometime during the week. But when my schedule gets more regular, then I'll definitely announce it on the channel. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just embellishments and stuff. Yeah. I probably will do a separate stream on that. I've touched on a few of those elements in other videos, but I cannot off the top of my head remember which ones those are. But we'll talk a little bit about embellishments a little bit later. Right. Okay. So I was pulling up an example of key signature. So key signature is our term number 14. So we're getting near to the end. And let's just pull up this little scale exercise. All right. Let's see if OBS will be kind to me today and work on the first try. No promises though. So window capture. And we want to we'll do Adobe. And it's not quite fitting. Let's see. Okay. So let's see how I can make this work. Now it's too big. Bear with me, y'all. OBS is always kind of trippy. Okay, so key signature. So what does a key signature actually do? Key signature will tell you what the key of the song is, right? It's like a very quick shorthand method to say right away at the beginning of your tab or your sheet music what key it's in. So I have a little example tab here. It's just showing a major scale drill where we kind of go through different combinations of the A major scale. But the key signature is this section right here. Let me make sure I'm a little bit more specific. You see this little bundle of hashtags? These are called sharps. You probably already know that, but in case you didn't. And when you see here, depending on the number of sharps, or sometimes it's flats as well, depending on the number of symbols here, it'll tell you exactly which key you're in. So after having spent some time working with this, I know from just experience that when you see 3 sharps, that's the key of A. You know, maybe I'm not just reading this right here. I'm definitely new from experience. But when you see 3 sharps, you know it's A. When you see 5 sharps, you know it's B major. When you see 1 flat, you know it's B flat major. So it's like a really quick shorthand method of just saying, oh, at a glance, I know what key we're in. And that saves you a lot of time, especially if you know all your scales and you know your number system. We're going to get to number system in a second. But whenever you see this, whenever I provide any kind of tab to my patrons or to private students, I'd always try to include that key signature. That way they know, boom, right here, all I need to worry about are just the notes in the key of A major. Makes it very simple. All right, so that's key signature. Now let's turn that off, and let's move that back over here. And shrink that window. Okay. And just checking chat. Okay, we're still doing good. All right, home stretch, everybody. Stay with me. I appreciate you making it this far. We're gonna go on to the number system. Okay, so I wrote a lot about this one in my notes. By the way, so everything that I'm going over today, I have condensed into a PDF. I'm going to upload that to my Patreon account after this lesson gets posted to the channel. I'll probably end up dropping the link for that either in a pinned comment or in the description to this video. So if you want to make sure you can go back and review and say, oh, what did Tizo talk about? What was term number 3? You can always do that. Just become a patron. Check it out. I got some other stuff there for beginner and intermediate guitarists, things to help you out. I got tabs for songs I don't cover on the channel. All my patrons are allowed to request tabs for songs. I can't guarantee I'll get to it, but I will definitely take a look, and if I can tab it out, I will. All right, I try to make sure I go above and beyond for my patrons. So definitely check that out. Link will be in a pinned comment after this lesson gets posted to the channel. So number 15, number system. So what it is, and this is very important, especially if you hope to play on stage with other instrumentalists and vocalists, the number system is a shorthand method for referring to the chords in a given key using numbers instead of their names. So instead of saying A major, so like we did before, instead of saying G major, C major, D major, if you were in the key of G, you would say 1, 4, 5. And that would tell your other bandmate all they need to know, okay? So it's really that quick to communicate, and that's why it's so powerful. So the chords are numbered 1 through 7 because there are 7 notes in a scale, and each of those notes become the root note for a chord. All right, we're using a lot of our terms now. Each of those notes, those 7 notes, becomes the root note for a different chord. And then each of those numbers, 1 through 7, also have certain implied chord qualities that you would expect to see. So the way it goes is the first, the fourth, and the fifth chords in a key would typically be major chords. They would have a major chord quality. The second, third, and sixth chords would be minor. All right, and all that leaves left is the 7 chord, which is diminished. Okay, so 1, 4, 5 would be major, 2, 3, 6 are minor, and the 7th chord is diminished. So that's what the number system will imply right off the top. Now there are times when you would deviate from that. You can also use the number system to highlight when things are different. So like, let's say you are doing a 1, 4, 5 progression, but the 5 chord, you want it to be a minor chord, right? So 1, 4, 5 are typically major. So what you would say is you would say we're playing a 1, 4, 5 minor progression. And when you say 5 minor, that would tell the other bandmates that 5 chord is not going to be the typical major chord, it'll be a minor chord. So you would just specify those deviations. And there's different ways, there's plenty of different ways to describe the differences whenever you want to change from what would be typically the major, minor, or diminished chords, and you would just say it after the number to indicate that. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but number system, learn it. If you're just hearing about it for the first time now, go on YouTube, look up number system, find every video you can on it. That's what I did, and just watch from a bunch of different teachers. It'll start to click and it'll start to make sense. And then most importantly, don't just watch, pick up your instrument, try to see if you can work this stuff out on the neck of your guitar. It's very, very important. All right, term number 16. So now we're gonna go away from some of the more, general music theory things, and we're gonna focus specifically on things to do with timing, okay? So these last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms are gonna be about timing. So the first one, term number 16, is gonna be called it's beat, all right? So what a beat is it's the basic unit of time in music, all right? Beats can last for a short time, they can last for a long time. It depends on a bunch of other factors, but the beat, it just gives you like a unit to say this is 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. Helps you organize your music in time, okay? So now the next thing, term number 17, is gonna be bar, or you might have heard it called measure. What a bar is, or what a measure is, it's a group of beats. Typically, that number of beats can vary from 2 to 6 or even more, but 2 to 6 is most common. 4 is actually the most common, but typically it'll be in that range of 2 to 6 beats per bar. And it really just depends on the rhythmic structure of the music. And there's some things that will tell us what that structure is. But so beats give us a way of like having some kind of unit to say this is what this note, or when we play this note. And then a bar or measure, same thing, will determine how we group those beats and kind of arrange them on the sheet music. So let me go back to Adobe really quickly and show you. So in that PDF from earlier, right, key signatures right here. Now the beats, each of these note symbols represent 1 beat. And there's a reason why, but you'll see here we have basically 4 note symbols, and here we have the tab down here. That's what you'd actually be playing, okay? Excuse me, it's a lot of talking. So now what you have here is you have 4 beats, and now this little line is the division that shows you where the next bar starts. So these 4 make up 1 bar, and you'll see the little number 1 right here. And then these next 4 make up bar 2. All right, so you see all the little numbers here will tell you what bar you're in. This is bar 3, this is bar 4, so on and so forth. So every one of these bars has 4 beats, and we've just assigned these notes in particular to each of these beats. Okay? Now, the next term that you want to know is meter. Okay, so we were talking about how all these things, how long beats and bars last, is all about the rhythmic structure of the piece of music. So what is that rhythmic structure? It's called the meter. It's how we lay out the pattern that we have to follow. Okay, so you saw there in that specific example that we had 4 beats making up a bar. And the reason that we know that is from our number 19 term, which is time signature. All right, so second to last term, time signature. And all that is it's a numerical way of representing what the meter is. It's a way of showing us really quickly, okay, this is how these beats and bars are laid out. And so let me show you how that works real quick. Where'd it go? Okay, back to our tab. So the reason why each of these bars has only 4 beats is because of this little fraction, we can call it. It's called the time signature. And it looks like a stacked group of numbers, right? 2 numbers. Now, what these numbers mean, top number will tell you how many beats go to a measure, or how many beats go to a bar. So it just straight up tells us there's 4. And that's why we have 4 here and 4 there. And we always have that dividing line starting the next bar or the next measure. The bottom number will tell you what kind of note gets 1 beat. So sometimes, even though we have 4 beats, we might want to fit more than 4 notes in this little length of time, or in this space of time. So you can use different, what are called subdivisions of notes. All these notes here are called quarter notes, and that's why they kind of correspond to the 4. Like think of 1/4, think of fractions. Quarter notes, so that's why they get one of these. But if you reduce the note length to something like an 8th note or a 16th note, I'm not going to go into detail about those just now, but just know that a 8th note is shorter. It takes up less time to play than a quarter note for the same tempo. So if these were all 8th notes, which are exactly half the length of a quarter note, you could fit 8 of these, basically 8 notes in this span, and it's still 4 beats per bar, but you can fit more notes in there. And so that's why it just specifies, that's why you have to be specific, because there's different kinds of notes, and that bottom number will tell you which kind of note you're working with, which note gets 1 beat. All right, so because this is 4/4 time, that's what we call it, 4/4 time, which is also called common time because tons of songs are written in 4/4. It just tells right away, quarter notes get 1 beat, and there are 4 beats per measure, or 4 beats per bar. All right. And okay, we're getting down to the end. So the very last term that I believe every guitarist should know, probably already do know, is tempo. Okay. And what tempo is, it's the speed or pace of a piece of music. We typically measure this in beats per minute, abbreviated BPM. And in combination with the time signature, tempo will dictate the timing and the duration of the notes being played. So it tells you when to play a note, and it tells you for how long should that note be ringing out. Okay? And so really quickly, we can go back to our tab. The tempo is right here on this tab, and it'll be right there for any tab that I make for you. So it just says 1 quarter note is what we're working with, and we're working with 120 beats per minute, 120 BPM. So that means that each of these notes, you can fit 120 of them in 1 minute. So they're playing pretty fast, all right? And now there are other ways to represent the tempo in tab. You can have it where an 8th note is the 120, so then it would be slower sounding. I have to double check on that, I think, if I were to play this tab in my notation software. But in any case, I typically stick to, unless I'm in a different key signature, like 6/8 is another common one. I typically stick to just having the BPM correlate to a quarter note. So 120 beats per minute, which is pretty quick. So slower tempos, 80, 70, that's going to be like more of your slow 6/8 R&B type of stuff. And then when you're getting like really fast into the 180s, 170s, that's like quartet, upbeat, church, congregational stuff. So it can vary pretty wildly, and that's why you want to make sure you have your tempo listed out, written out, whatever it is, so that everybody knows how long do you play these notes for that we have down here. and how many, what's the word? How long do you play them for, and when do you actually start playing these notes? So you need the tempo and the time signature to work that out. Okay, and it's something that'll kind of naturally come to you. As you learn more and more songs, you'll end up getting more experience with like checking tempos, learning which types of tempos fit which genre, all right? Because genres typically use a range of tempos that are really close to each other. And then you'll also just get used to like just thinking and counting in your head 4 beats per measure or 6 beats per measure, whatever it is. So that's it. That's all 20 terms. We kind of flew through that. But I really wanted to make sure that all of you kind of at least were exposed to these terms. Maybe my explanation was too fast. Maybe it wasn't good. That's fine. And that's why I stress use this list. Download the PDF off my Patreon, use that list, and just start using it as like a research checklist to say, okay, I didn't understand the way Tizo explained what a scale is. So go and look up what is a scale, find many YouTube videos, get subscriptions to guitar websites that'll go into more detail with music theory, and just hear from as many sources as possible about these terms until it sinks in, because it really is valuable information. That's why I put that together for you guys. That is about it. So let me go ahead and check chat. Andrea says, great foundation. I appreciate that. I want to get you guys started off on the right foot. I learned all this stuff way too late, and it took a long time for it to sink in. But it just opened up so many doors musically for me, especially when it came to playing with others, because you really have to know your stuff. You don't want to be the one that doesn't know the number system on stage. You don't want to be the one that doesn't know how to play something in a different key if the vocalist can't sing in that key that morning. Like, you want to make sure that you kind of build up your understanding of all these things and how they work, and then apply them to your guitar. Very important. Don't just watch a bunch of YouTube videos. Take it to the guitar, watch one video, see if you can apply what that video is talking about to your guitar. Then watch your next video, that kind of stuff. And the more you get it under your fingers, the more you'll get it in your head, and you'll be good to go. Alrighty. So a lot more. I did say I was going to touch quickly on some of those embellishments. So here's some homework for you. I shouldn't say every embellishment. Most R&B embellishments, right? Stuff that we do, like make sure I'm not muted. So like that's a minor 7 chord. I'm playing a D minor 7. Let me make sure camera 2 is awake before I switch to it. Okay, so I'm playing a D minor 7, right? So if I were to do some kind of embellishment, right? That kind of thing. Right? That's typical R&B minor 7 stuff. All that comes from is from the major scale, the major scale, the minor scale, and the pentatonic scale. So it's those 3 scales, all right? Every embellishment that I've come across has used some form of the major scale, the natural minor scale, because there are 3 different minor scales. There's natural minor, there's melodic minor, and harmonic minor. But the natural minor scale and the pentatonic scale will give you different chord or different embellishments to play off of each chord. So you can go. So that's just. That's all pentatonic. Okay. Specifically, that's box 4 minor pentatonic. So all you're doing is just layering a little pentatonic lick over your chord. You can do the same thing for the 3 chord or the 2 chord. All right. And that's not based off of box 4. That's based off of box 3. So it'd be. Let's see. All right. And then same thing with some other ones. Let's see what's another embellishment you could do. All right. So that's a major 7. Sorry, I'm not going into detail. I'm just trying to explain the concept because this is homework for you. All right. The concept is when you have a move like that, and I'll play slow. Maybe you can transcribe it by ear. All right, it's all off of a D major 7 chord. what you'll find is once you do those little lines, you'll find that there is a scale that has all of those notes already mapped, and it will lay over that chord. It'll be overlapping that chord. And so if you really know all of your pentatonic shapes, if you know all of your major scale shapes, meaning the 7 modes of the major scale, as well as knowing all your minor scale shapes, all your minor scale shapes, then you'll start to see, like, when you learn these little embellishments from like watching a Carry Too Smooth video, or watching, who's another guy? Nasty Soul is a good dude. I think his name is Jordan something. So you watch some video, or you watch a Instagram video, and you transpose some kind of progression or some kind of embellishment off of a chord. There's always going to be an underlying scale that goes right over the top of that embellishment, and it lines up perfectly. So learn those scales, and you'll start to see, like, oh, you know, all of those notes are in this pentatonic scale, or they're all in this major scale. But you really have to start learning those shapes. And don't drink from the hydrant. By that I mean don't bite off too much at once. If you are just getting into the pentatonic scale, learn one shape first. Play that shape up and down the neck of your guitar, back and forth. Play it up and down while you're watching TV. Then get it really under your fingers, and then move on to box 2 and then box 3. Same thing with the 7 modes of the major scale. If you start learning too much, which is our tendency, especially if we don't know what we're doing or we don't have a teacher, we try to bite off a little bit too much, and we just start researching everything and come down the rabbit hole. And you're like, all right, now I know all these 7 mode shapes, and I know all 5 pentatonic shapes, and I know all these natural minor, melodic minor, harmonic minor, and you find out at the end of all that, you don't know how to actually put it on your guitar, because you've just been spending so much time just like theoretically learning it and not actually using it. So the best thing you can do is slow down, like slow way down, way more than you want to. Take 1 shape or 2 shapes over a month, okay? Really internalize it, get it to the point where you can actually incorporate it into your playing when you're improvising or soloing or whatever, and then add 2 more shapes or 1 more shape, and just kind of build upon that, okay? So we're talking years of work, not weeks, not months. Okay, let's see. Andreas says, do you need to know all the scales before you can use the number system? No, that's the beauty of it. I have a video, and it's the second time I brought it up. I have a video called The Major Scale and Diatonic Chords on my channel. I'll go ahead and look that. I'll try to find it and put it in the description below. I was supposed to do that for my last video too. But it goes through, all you need to know is the major scale. That's it for the number system. So major scale, start with C major, because there's no sharps or flats. It doesn't make it like confusing for you. Start with C major. You have all the notes of C major, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And then each of those notes becomes the root note for a different chord. You have C major, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, right? And that's your number system right there. So all of those chords in order, the 1 is C major, the 2 is D minor, the 3 is E minor, the 4 is F major, the 5 is G major, the 6 is A minor, the 7 is B diminished. And we say that term, the 7, the 1 chord, the 2 chord. That's how we refer to it. It's just saying the chord that's based off of the first note in the scale is the 1 chord. The chord that's based off of the second note in the scale is the 2 chord. That's how it works. All right, so just learn the major scale. Watch a bunch of videos on the number system. There's plenty of great ones out there. One on my channel. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Show me some support. I love you guys. Love me back, please. But watch every video you can on the number system, really internalize it, and then you'll start being able to apply it. And here's the thing. So for songs you already know, see if you can figure out what they are in terms of the number system, and then play them in different keys to test yourself. So if you know a song goes like this, right? So find out what key that song is in, then write that scale out, figure out, okay, so these chords are, so it's a F major, a E minor, a D minor, and a C major. So, okay, so if we're in the key of C major, that would be a 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you can write that out. And so now if you want to go to a different key like G major, write that G major scale out and see if you can play that same type of progression in terms of the numbers. Play that same progression, but in the key of G major and then the key of F major, and really work it out all over your fretboard. That's the best way. All right, I think my voice is gonna give out. I need to grab some water, but I'm very glad I was able to do this. I'm glad you guys were able to stop by. Hopefully this helps you. If I helped you in any way, please show some love. Like, comment, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out whenever I do another live stream, as well as share me with your friends and folks that are hoping to learn guitar. The primary focus of this channel is R&B music, but I like to do these longer live streams where I go into more general guitar stuff. Sometimes I do things like how to purchase a guitar online, or different things that you want to know about taking care of your guitar. I want to make sure I have those kinds of topics covered in these longer streams, and then during the week, I'll probably have shorter streams where I'm just teaching licks, or I'm just teaching a chord progression for a song, that type of deal. But I really want to do this for you guys because it's not enough just to learn your favorite songs. I want you to learn how they work, how to play them in different keys, how to embellish them and improvise over them. All that stuff makes you a more complete guitarist, and I want that for all of my students. And I call you all my students, even if you're not taking private lessons. But, look at that segue. If you are interested in private lessons, I do offer them via Zoom. If you want, go ahead and send me an email to tizoguitar@gmail.com, just like the name of the channel, tizoguitar@gmail.com. Say, hey, I'm looking for someone to kind of help me figure all this guitar stuff out. If you're looking for someone to come alongside you and help you on your journey, I am more than willing to send you some information. Hopefully we can work together and get you on the right track. So I didn't have anybody showing me anything, and I really wish. I couldn't afford a guitar teacher when I was starting out, so I just kind of did it the hard way and made a lot of mistakes, and I don't want that for you guys. So definitely reach out if that's what you're interested in. Otherwise, just stay tuned. There's more good content coming. The plan is, actually, let me not get ahead of myself with the plan, but I intend to be back for a shorter stream sometime early this week. Probably teaching a song or something like that. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Hit a big milestone today. The channel hit 8,000 subscribers. So thank you for everybody who subscribed. I truly appreciate the support. We're trying to march on to 10K. That's the plan. So I'm going to keep going. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out via the email I gave out, comments, all that, and I'll do my best to get back to you. So have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.